Our next bill is going to be House Bill 304. We have a public hearing. So let everybody shift around. If there's anybody out in the hallway that wants to participate in House Bill 304, we'll give everybody time. Three, four, one, two. All right. All right, with that, I have the sign-up sheet in front of me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you 3 minutes. I will waive at 2. After 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to please conclude your comments and sit back down. Again, we will not take a vote on any bill that has a public hearing today. If you are in the audience and you speak out of turn, you will be removed. So with that, Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you for the opportunity. I guess what I'll do is just give a overview of the bill itself, and then that way we can proceed with the public hearing thereafter. I would preface this to say that I've had considerable exposure to dealing with issues such as this with solid waste management landfills. This goes back under the Bentley administration. I was appointed to serve as chairman of a joint legislative committee then that was a solid waste management task force, out of which then some legislation was produced. Myself and Senator Albritton were two of the primary legislators involved with that task force, in which this helped to put the procedures going forward for from that point on solid waste management landfills. It was changed, improved, I guess what I would say. So with that, then let me go on into this bill. This bill is attempting to clarify some of the elements of that original process, revised process that we put in motion as a result of that task force work and the subsequent legislation that passed. Currently, the governing body of a county or municipality must approve or disapprove each new solid waste site. The governing body of a county or municipality must approve or disapprove any modification to an existing solid waste site. After the governing body of a county or municipality approves either a new solid waste site or a modification to an existing solid waste site, then the Department of Environmental Management, which we know as ADEM, must approve or disapprove a permit for the actual facility. The permitting process that is approved through the Department of Environmental Management deals with technical, environmental, and regulatory issues as the process progresses. This legislation provides non-substantive technical revisions to the existing law. This bill clarifies that the local governing body of a county or municipality is not required to approve by vote each and every technical revision made during the ADM permitting process and after the initial approval. To require the governing body of a county or municipality to vote on each and every technical revision during the permitting process would not only be costly, but could stagnate the process tremendously. Also, the county or municipal governing authority may lack the level of expertise required to vote on these issues that are in the scope of ADEM, the Department of Environmental Management, and its authority. With that, Mr. Chairman, then I recognize that you want to proceed maybe with the public hearing. I'll be glad, if need be, then to come back up. I would make mention that we do have representation from ADEM here as well. I think I saw League municipalities represented. I see some of those that represent waste management from private entities. And I believe I've not yet seen county government here, but I feel like they may be close by then on that. So anyway, I've tried to have all the stakeholders that have a part of this then present here as well for this, should there be questions that arise. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and we will probably call on you later.
Thank you.
First, I'm going to go to a proponent, Buddy Cox. Mr. Cox, welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, and I will be brief. I hope not to use all my time. My name is Buddy Cox. I'm a lawyer at Bradley, Arent, Bolt Cummings in Birmingham. And with Lynn White, I've been representing the city of Dothan in connection with the expansion of their landfill. And this goes back, really it goes back before I started practicing law. When I first got here, the Alabama legislature, like a lot of every state, was dealing with the fact that there were new regulations coming in effect from the EPA, which required what's called a Subtitle D landfill. The liners that we have now, leachate collection systems, run-on, run-off controls, that all started in the early 1990s. Before that, the landfill business, particularly with municipal waste, was a little bit of a Wild West show. There was a race. A lot of counties, a lot of cities had these facilities. They didn't manage them well. The Subtitle D process was coming into effect. So the Alabama legislature, in its wisdom, put a moratorium on new landfills. And so we've got to study this before we have new landfills. And they did just that. And what they came up with was basically a division of responsibility. On the one hand, you had the site approval. You know, is this a location where we as the host government want a landfill in our county, in our municipality, or whatever? And that was the first question that had to be answered. And if that question was answered positively, it moved into the very difficult and technical details from ADEM of, is this facility going to be built in a way that protects the environment? So you had two parts. The problem is that the word such application in the original rule created some ambiguity in our view. And we've had the Alabama Court of Civil Appeals, in our case involving a permit appeal, said that the city was supposed to review the ADEM permit as part of its host government approval thing. We don't think the legislature ever intended that. I've been practicing law in Alabama for 30 years. I've dealt with a lot of landfills. We've never done that. We've always gotten the host government approval, and then we know the site's acceptable to the local community, and then we move forward with the technical application. And the Court of Civil Appeals decision has basically created a do loop where every time ADEM requests some additional information, we have to go back and do a new host government approval. So this is a fabulous way to fix this. And on behalf of the city of Dothan, we would ask that you support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to go back, and I'm going to have an opponent of the bill, and David Del Vecchio? Vecchio, sorry.
Good afternoon, sir.
3 minutes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, over 50 years ago, I took an oath as an officer of the United States Army to defend this country and its Constitution. I never dreamed that years later I'd be standing before you having to do exactly that. Defending my First Amendment rights and the rights of my fellow neighbors against a new bill that has a wrong purpose. 3 sitting judges stopped the city of Dothan and ADEM from continuing their quest to extend the landfill because of the facts against the case. The city's response to the judges was to ask them another time to change their mind. So while we were again waiting for a second judgment by them, the city continues to dump trash on the new site. Federal law states that they must cover the dump site every night with at least 6 inches of fill, some appropriate cover, to keep the smell down, the birds and the animals away, and the wind from blowing plastic bags all over. There are several hundred buzzards that fly over the dump every day, and buzzards do not normally kill livestock. However, because there's so many of them, because the operators do not usually cover the dump site as federal law requires, it feeds the buzzards. There's not enough food for the buzzards because there are so many of them, so they kill newborn calves before they can stand and walk that live next to the dump site. My property is next to the new dump site, over 3/4 of a mile. This year alone, they came and plucked the eyes out of 3 of my calves, newborns. And before we could get to the first one, while it was still alive, they were eating it in the morning of its birth. I brought a pamphlet for you, and I hope you'll receive it, a copy of a letter from the Alabama Department of Environmental Management that states the landfill in Dothan has excessive amounts of heavy metal in soil samples taken from the hydrogeology section. They recommended that the city of Dothan, for the city, that construction workers at the site wear protective gear. While they were doing this reclamation site, they overturned graves of Black Americans, my neighbors, and indigenous Americans. And a gentleman, a black gentleman way into his 90s, came and made a presentation before our commissioners and showed them and talked to them and shared with them. Nothing's been done. I like HB 304 that Mr. Baker presented for Conecuh County in 2017 because it gives me as a citizen the right to speak. It gives me as a citizen a right to complain. And it doesn't allow government to roll over me like I was just nothing. I served my country for 6 years in the service. I was a good officer. I loved America. I love America. I do not like what some folks are trying to do. Thank you for your time. And if you allow me, I would like to pass these out to you.
Please do. And you nailed 3 minutes exactly, almost. Now we'll hear from, is it Gentry Shows? Am I reading this correctly? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time. My name is Gentry Shows. I am a resident of Coosa County here in Alabama. And I represent the National Waste and Recycling Association chapter here in Alabama. I've been in the solid waste industry for 32 years. And I was fortunate enough to be a member of the task force with Representative Baker as we developed these changes to the regulations at that time in, I believe, 2017. So I am here in support of House Bill 304. I think it does a little housekeeping to the items as we changed and presented. We felt like it made it fair for everyone, industry, political officials, and the general public, with the things that we changed. So we are in support of this bill, and we feel like that it was never the intent of the bill or the the statute that you would have to get multiple approvals by the host counties or cities when a landfill is sited or when a modification is done. So with saying that, we are, the industry is in total support of the bill. We feel like it's good for business and for the public, and we just want to express our support to the bill as Representative Baker has presented it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Next, we will hear from Michael Del Vecchio. I'm assuming y'all are related. I'm pretty smart.
Chairman, committee, I want to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Michael Del Vecchio. I'm from Dothan, Alabama. We are asking that the amendment that was passed in 2017 remain intact and that this new bill not pass. The process that we have and we've had for these years is a number of checks and balances that we have to keep us safe. Each step that is taken away, and this new bill will take a step away, is one less check we have to make things right. Moving the goalpost during the game changes the rules and causes our voices to be diminished, removing how we are protected as citizens. That's why we need local approval and every step of this process to be able to express our grievances and our concerns, to keep the goalposts where they are, and keep these checks and balances in place. So I'm asking you to vote against this new bill. I want to thank you for your consideration on this matter.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. And last opponent, we will hear from Bobby Lewis. Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Chairman Pringle, the rest of the committee here. I am Bobby Lewis. I'm out of Dothan. What was failed to be mentioned is Lewis and Nattels versus City of ADM and their erroneous operation. In their appeal, which the Alabama Court of Superior Appeals unanimously ruled in our favor, that they had not been following the rules, regulations, and laws. This is their request for a rehearing before the Court of Civil Appeals. They admitted they broke the law, they breached the rules, and they breached the regulations. Now, I don't believe I could have come in here fully armed, but that's their interpretation's what they say. They interpret the law. They interpret the regulations. They interpret they can and can't do it. This is not a mother may I. The rules are ironclad. Remember, so unanimous with one recusal. Matt Friday recused because he's a friend of mine and my daughter's. recused himself, a unanimous ruling from an all-Republican Court of Civil Appeals, not once but twice. That's what this bill is about. I've fought this for a while. I talked about those heavy metals. Myself and 2 other neighbors had blood tests drawn. 4 years ago, I looked like death warmed over for the better part of 6 months. Why? Because I had some of those heavy metals along with my neighbor. My neighbor had whelps and about dime-sized sores that would not heal. I went to various doctors. My medical doctor drew blood finally. I got tipped off about this, and I got that information, and I had those blood drawn along with some of my neighbors. And where did it come from? They failed to notify. It says in that document that Dr. Del Vecchio, it is Dr. Del Vecchio, said. Those heavy metals, but we didn't do anything outside the landfill. I've talked to multiple landfill workers. None of them was told, hey, you better hazmat gear up, but that's what that document is saying. And that's ADEM's own rules being just swept under the rug day after day, week after week. This bill does not need to be changed, but strengthened. The reason it needs to be strengthened is this is a safeguard for the community, for the citizens, and for those of us who stand and will fight the tyranny of some government agent or bureaucracy that's run amok. We talk about the graves. I don't guess they was there. I grew up out there on that property, ladies and gentlemen. The farm I own, my mom and dad bought in 1955, and I romped them down them creeks and bottom. There were 28 graves. It's in the records that I reported, and not one single thing has been done by any attorney or any legislative or any judicial branch. I carried that complaint to the Attorney General's office, and they investigated it. Said I had probable cause and it needed to be prosecuted. I took it to our district attorney in Dothan and said that. I actually had the chief investigator with the sheriff's department investigate it. Found out I was saying, I call it cooking the books. Falsifying the records. If I falsify the records, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to go to jail. Yet these people haven't. And I took it. Our district attorney, whom I considered a good friend until he made this statement. So you say. Chief Investigator Rafferty said, no, Pat, he's telling the truth. So you say. So we can't seem to get justice for not only ourselves, but the people whose remains were destroyed. And I do mean destroyed. I don't guess they were there. They might have not ever shown on any historical facts as a cemetery. There's a little church there, a little building that was used as a church and a schoolhouse. I grew up half a mile from that site, maybe not quite a half a mile. I still own the property I grew up on. I don't use my water wells because of the illegal operation of this landfill. And I said what I meant and said it, but it won't back up from that. I'm not called names, but by people who I've approached. Right across over there at the Attorney General's office. I know right who I talked to. I still have the email correspondence from him. We need justice. The dead people whose graves were desecrated cries out for justice. And this committee could send this to an early grave and put it where it belongs. Leave the bill alone. Representative Baker, he proposed the bill when he was talking about building that landfill over in his neck of the woods. That's when this legislation was actually passed. He failed to mention that. But that's a cold fact. You remember it said big signs all over the south part of the state. Don't dump on us in Conecuh County. I think I'm right. It was Conecuh County. I say end the bill. End it now. Don't continue the chicanery of kicking this can down the road. And contrary to what a smooth-talking attorney says, it's about the fact that they have been caught repeatedly in the Court of Civil Appeals after they filed for rehearing, and they admitted to not following the rules, not following regulations, and not following the law. Y'all took an oath of office. Dr. Del Vecchio took an office. If I'd have gone in the military, I was right over at Gunner and tried. I'm going to wind it up. Put this to a draft. Leave the bill alone. If anything, let me give you some proposed strengthening. Because those people, and we cry out for justice, and this committee can stand as arbiter of justice and let the real verdict be coming out when judgment is brought against these people one of these days. I thank you for your time. There's one last thing I'll say. David Lutter, attorney that represented us, said if it must change, we might propose an amendment. Okay? Now, because I respect the man dearly, he's the most intelligent man I've ever had the privilege to call an attorney and a friend. He proposed, if you must pass this suggested amendment to House Bill 304, page 4, lines 7 and 8. So paragraph D, the application of the plan for local approval. Paragraph 8, shall be accompanied by a copy of the permit application to the department and an applicable fee payable to the same. I'm going to leave a copy of this, but I'll ask you to let this bill stay. And if it,
I can keep that.
and if it must, like I said, it's an all Court of Civil Appeals, all Republican. That's stout in itself. They ruled we're right, they're wrong. And where I'm from, right is right and wrong is wrong. So please don't turn an injustice even worse. Thank you for your time. And I'll take any questions if you have any.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Mr. Baker, we're going to wrap up with you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect, just a brief clarification, and then I know this is something we'll take up at a later time, as you've already mentioned, so no vote being taken today, so there'll still be more time for further dialogue and discussion on this. I would mention that, well, first, going back to the Conecuh County landfill, you are correct that that was a lot of the impetus with my getting involved in a deep way, trying to make sure that the public was protected and have their opportunity, their rights. So that was incorporated into the bill that was in 2017 on that. So the early legislation that I was part of was a moratorium simply to allow for more opportunity for there to be discussion and a deeper look at this, which subsequently there was the task force that was created under the Bentley administration, which I was very privileged to be able to serve as part of that and the subsequent legislation. But I would say this legislation, this is not directed towards any particular landfill in the state. This is all about the application process, is what this bill is about. And so at the front end of this, it's where the front end is that the public be notified. And that's strongly embedded in the legislation that we passed back in 2017 that we felt was not adequately addressed in the earlier procedure that was in place before the legislation in 2017. So this is attempting, the legislation we have now is attempting to clarify. So it's where we still want the very heavy local involvement, education, and opportunity to voice their either advocacy or opposition to the site. So it's primarily the site selection at the local level. There are things that are looked at, such as the socioeconomic factors, as well as just in regards to the location of the site itself. But beyond that, then, as it moves on to ADM, it becomes more the technical part of that the local officials are maybe less available to provide their knowledge or expertise on those technical revisions. So that's what we're trying to do, is to clarify so that there would not be the repetitive having to come back over and over for any of these modifications, technical revisions that ADM, that is at the next layer up the step, the ladder on that. So really what this bill is not removing anything in the process. If anything, it's just trying to clarify within the process that was already established back in 2017. With that, I know this will be taken up at a later time. If you want me to answer any questions at this point, I'll be glad to, but I understand you may take up questions
Do
later
any
time.
members of the committee have a question right now? With that, we conclude the
Thank you
public